Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're exploring, well, something I think a lot of English learners aspire to, that sort of hidden dimension of mastery. It's about writing that, doesn't just get the message across, but actually sings. Writing that truly flows and swings.
Right, that's the goal, isn't it? Moving beyond just technically correct sentences.
Exactly, getting past those maybe slightly clunky sentences.
Yeah, transforming them into something smooth, professional, something with impact. It's a common challenge, I find, even for advanced learners. They hit this plateau.
A plateau where the grammar's fine, but the feel is missing.
Precisely. It lacks that personality, that pace. The writing might be accurate, but it doesn't quite land the way native writing often does. It doesn't have that natural cadence.
That swing we're talking about. So our mission today really is to break that down. We want to distill the core elements, the actionable things you, the listener, can actually do to get that rhythm and flow into your own writing.
We're aiming to provide practical tools, tools to make your communication, whether it's an important report or just a quick email, not just okay, but genuinely captivating, memorable even.
So we're moving beyond just fixing mistakes, right? We're looking at the architecture, the musicality of the prose itself.
Absolutely. Building beautiful, engaging writing from the ground up.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. We often hear rhythm and flow used together, maybe even interchangeably.
They do seem similar on the surface.
But for someone really trying to improve, what's the actual difference? How do we separate these two ideas?
That's a great starting point. Think of rhythm as the internal beat of the writing. It's the pulse.
The musicality you mentioned.
Exactly. It's what you'd hear if you read the text aloud. It comes from the pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables, but also, crucially, from how sentence lengths change.
So varying the length is key to rhythm.
Fundamental. It dictates the pace. If all your sentences are roughly the same length, the rhythm becomes monotonous, predictable, like a metronome stuck on one speed.
Like a drum beat that never changes.
Okay, so rhythm is the beat, the sound, the pace within sentences.
Yes. And if rhythm is the beat, then flow is more like the current carrying you along.
The movement between the ideas.
Precisely. Flow is that seamless, logical movement. It's how one sentence connects to the next, how paragraphs link together smoothly. It's about clarity of progression.
So it's the highway the reader travels on, making sure there are no sudden stops or confusing turns.
That's a perfect analogy. Poor flow means the reader hits speed bumps, gets lost, even if the individual sentences, the rhythm, are actually quite nice.
But when you get both right,
Then you get prose that really does, as you said, swing and swirl. They work together. Rhythm provides the energy, flow provides the direction.
Now, this seems particularly vital for English learners. Why is understanding rhythm so foundational in English specifically? Is it different from other languages?
It really is, and this is a point that often gets missed. English is what linguists call a stress-timed language.
Stress-timed. Okay, what does that mean practically? It means that the rhythm isn't based on giving each syllable equal time, like in, say, Spanish or Japanese, which are more syllable-timed.
Right. In Spanish, syllables often feel more evenly paced.
Exactly. In English, the timing revolves around the stressed syllables. We naturally group syllables around these stress points, saying the important words louder and longer and sort of compressing the less important ones.
So the little words, the A, into, they get squashed.
They often get reduced, yeah. Schwa sounds are everywhere. It's the main content, words, nouns, verbs, adjectives that carry the stress and therefore the core rhythm.
And if a learner doesn't grasp this when writing,
their writing can feel very unnatural when read aloud. Sentences might sound flat or robotic because every word is given almost equal weight. It creates that choppy feeling.
The marching rhythm you mentioned earlier instead of singing.
Right, you try to read it out loud and you find yourself almost stumbling where it feels very rigid. Good rhythm lets the language breathe.
Could you maybe give us an example? Not just a simple cat sat on the mat, but something more, professional, perhaps. Show the difference.
Sure. Let's imagine part of a business update. Here's a flat, rhythmically dull version. The team met yesterday morning. They discussed the project status then. The decision was made to proceed. The next steps are outlined below.
Okay, very factual. Short sentences, same kind of structure. A bit like bullet points without the bullets.
Exactly. Correct, but lifeless. Now, let's try to inject some rhythm and flow. During yesterday morning's meeting, the team engaged in a detailed discussion regarding the project's current status. Recognizing the urgency, the decision was made to proceed immediately, with the critical next steps outlined clearly below.
Okay, that feels very different. It pulls you through. The first part builds up, there's a pause with urgency, then the decision, then the outcome. It flows.
You feel the variation, right? The longer introductory clause, the emphasis on urgency and immediately. It uses the stress-timed nature of English to guide the reader's attention and sound more dynamic.
It sounds more confident, too.
It absolutely does. That command of rhythm signals a deeper command of the language, which definitely builds credibility, especially in professional writing.
So, okay, it sounds better, more professional, but let's dig into the real payoff. Why should a busy learner prioritize mastering this, arguably quite advanced skill? What are the big benefits?
Oh, the benefits are huge, and they go beyond just sounding nice. Firstly, it's about persuasion and credibility.
How so?
Well, think about it. Writing that flows smoothly and has a natural rhythm is simply easier for the brain to process. If your reader isn't struggling to decode clunky sentences, they can actually focus on your message.
So good rhythm makes your argument land better.
Definitely. It makes your ideas feel more coherent, more logical, more convincing. You build trust implicitly when your writing is easy and pleasant to read.
And I guess in today's world, with constant digital distractions.
That's the second point. Attention spans are incredibly short. Rhythmic writing, with its patterns and variations in pace, actually helps to hold the reader's attention.
It keeps them engaged, guides their eye down the screen or page.
Exactly. Short sentences grab attention. Longer sentences develop ideas. The variation prevents boredom. It keeps the reader hooked in a way that monotonous prose just can't.
Now, I've also heard something interesting that practicing this in writing can actually improve your speaking. Is there a connection there?
There's a very strong connection, and it's a fantastic bridge for learners when you practice reading your own rhythmic writing aloud.
Focusing on those stresses and the flow.
Yes. You're actively training your mouth, your ear, and your brain to the natural cadence of spoken English. You're internalizing the stress patterns.
So it helps bridge that gap between how you write and how you actually sound when you speak.
Absolutely. It helps you overcome that interference from perhaps a more syllable-timed native language. It makes your spoken English sound smoother, more natural, less like you're consciously translating in your head. It avoids that feeling of reading hard text that makes you run out of breath.
That makes a lot of sense. And this links into the cognitive side of things too, doesn't it? There's actual science behind why this works.
Oh, definitely. It's not just aesthetics. Rhythmic writing gives you a cognitive edge.
How does that work? Is it about memory?
Partly, yes. Our brains are fundamentally wired for pattern recognition. Think about music, chants, poetry rhythm helps us remember things.
Like learning nursery rhymes as kids.
Precisely. Cognitive linguistics research shows that text with clear rhythmic patterns and structures requires less mental effort to process. When the processing effort goes down, comprehension and retention go up.
So literally, if I write a report with good rhythm, my boss is more likely to remember the key points.
That's the implication, yes. The brain uses these rhythmic waves, neural oscillations, to process language. When the rhythm of the text aligns with the brain's natural processing rhythms, the information is assimilated more effectively, more efficiently.
Wow, so it's like you're making it easier for their brain to absorb the information.
You are. And think about studies linking musical training to better language skills.
Right, learning rhythm in music seems to help with reading.
Exactly. It suggests that practicing rhythmic patterns, whether in music or language, actually strengthens the neural pathways involved in processing sequential information. Applying rhythmic principles to writing, even simple ones like varying sentence lengths, helps organize the information in a way that optimizes cognitive flow.
So it's not just about sounding good, it's about thinking clearly and helping your reader think clearly too.
That's the deeper benefit. For the learner, practicing rhythm isn't just polishing the surface. It's potentially accelerating your overall English mastery by improving how you both produce and perceive the language. You're teaching your brain the music of English.
That's a powerful motivator. It's not just fluff, it's a fluency accelerator.
Yep.
Okay, so we're convinced rhythm and flow are crucial. Now, the big question, how do we actually do it? Let's get into the practical techniques. Tip 1 seems foundational. Vary sentence length.
Absolutely the cornerstone. If there's one thing to start with, it's this. Writing where every sentence is, say, 15, 20 words long just creates this droning, monotonous effect.
Like a flat line on a heart monitor.
Good analogy. You need peaks and valleys. Mix it up intentionally. Use short, sharp sentences, maybe 5 to 8 words, for impact, for emphasis, to make a clear point, like stop or it work.
Punchy.
Very. And then contrast those with longer, more flowing sentences, perhaps 25 words or more, where you can elaborate, describe, develop complex ideas, connect different clauses.
So you create this dynamic landscape of sound, short bursts and longer melodies.
Exactly. Imagine describing a complex situation in a long, detailed sentence, and then you follow it with a very short one.
Oh, wait.
The result was chaos. The contrast makes that short sentence hit so much harder.
It prevents the reader from just zoning out.
It keeps them awake, attentive, and the absolute key here is read your work aloud.
Ah, the read aloud test.
Always. If you find yourself running out of breath trying to finish a sentence, it's probably too long or poorly constructed. If you stumble over phrasing, the rhythm is off, your ear will tell you what your eye misses.
Great advice. Okay, tip 2. Use repetition and parallelism for musicality. Parallelism sounds a bit formal, like something from a big speech.
It can be, like Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream repetitions.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly useful in everyday writing, too, even technical stuff. Parallelism just means repeating a grammatical structure.
Give me an example in, say, a business context.
Okay, imagine you're listing project goals. A non-parallel, clunky version might be: our goals include increasing market share, customer retention needs improvement, and to reduce overhead costs. See how the structures are all different.
Yeah, it feels messy. Increasing, then customer retention needs, then to reduce.
Right. The parallel version cleans it up beautifully. Yeah. Our goals include increasing market share, improving customer retention, and reducing overhead costs.
Ah, verbing. Much cleaner.
Instantly clearer, more balanced, and rhythmically satisfying. It signals clarity of thought. It's persuasive because it feels organized.
And what about simple repetition? Isn't that usually bad?
Overuse is bad, yes. But strategic repetition can create a powerful rhythmic echo, driving a point home. Think simple. Analyze, adapt, achieve.
Creates a driving beat.
Exactly. Or repeating a key phrase across paragraphs to maintain focus. The trick is moderation and purpose. Don't repeat just for the sake of it.
Got it. Now, tip 3 feels more technical. Pay attention to syllable stress and meter. We know English is stress-timed, but how do we use that knowledge actively? You mentioned meter.
Yes. So meter is the underlying rhythmic pattern in a line or sentence. While we don't write strict poetry and reports, understanding common English meters helps create a smoother feel. The most natural and common one is iambic meter.
Iambic, that's the unstressed stress pattern, like dedum.
Precisely. Dedum, dedum. Think of Shakespeare. To be or not to be. Much of natural English conversation falls into this pattern. I went to town to buy some bread. It feels smooth, natural, conversational.
So aiming for a generally iambic feel in professional writing is good because it sounds normal.
It sounds normal, flowing, and trustworthy. It doesn't draw undue attention to itself, but you don't want only iambic rhythm.
Why not?
Because sometimes you need emphasis or urgency or a different feeling.
Yeah.
That's where other meters come in, like trochaic meter.
Trochaic, how's that different?
Trochaic is the reverse. Stressed, unstressed. Diumda, diamanda. Think of children's rhymes like twinkle, twinkle, little star. It feels heavier, more forceful, sometimes even like a warning or command.
Like danger, keep out.
Exactly. That's trochaic. So a sophisticated writer might use a generally iambic flow for explanation, but then switch to a trochaic phrase for a key finding or a call to action to give it more punch.
So you're consciously playing with these underlying beats.
You can, yes. A practical way to start thinking about this is simply to count the main beats or stresses in your sentences. Not the words, but the rhythmic pulses. Try to vary that number. Don't have 5 sentences in a row that all have 4 main beats. Mix it up.
That makes sense. More variation. Okay, tip 4. Incorporate alliteration and assonance. These sound really literary. Do they belong in, say, an email?
Subtly, yes. They add texture and can influence pace. Alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds at the start of words, like Peter Piper picked. In professional writing, it might be something like providing powerful performance. The P sounds can create a little bounce.
Makes it slightly more memorable.
And assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds within words. This is really interesting because it affects the mood and pace.
How do vowel sounds change the pace?
Think about short vowel sounds like it hit fast, quick. Get. They tend to make the writing feel faster, crisper, more urgent.
Okay.
Now think about long vowel sounds. Slow, smooth, easy, calm. They naturally slow the reader down, creating a sense of space, seriousness, or deliberation.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. So you can use vowel sounds to subtly control the reader's speed and feeling.
You absolutely can. Again, the key is subtlety. You don't want it to sound like bad poetry. These are like spices. A tiny bit enhances the flavor. Too much ruins the dish. They should support the rhythm, not dominate it.
Right. Now, tip 5 seems crucial for both rhythm and clarity. Eliminate unnecessary words and utilize transitions. Does being concise automatically help rhythm?
Inevitably. Wordiness kills rhythm. Every extra adverb, every passive construction, every redundant phrase just adds drag. It's like trying to run through mud.
So ruthlessly edit, as they say. Cut the fluff.
Absolutely. Crisp, clear writing naturally has more punch, more pace. Once your sentences are lean, you need smooth connections between them. That's where transitions come in.
Words like however, therefore, meanwhile.
Yes, but the danger for learners is falling back on the same few predictable ones. First, second, third, finally.
Right, the textbook transitions.
Advanced writers use a wider range. Sometimes it's a single word, sometimes a phrase. On the other hand, in addition to this, sometimes it's repeating a key word from the previous sentence, or even asking a rhetorical question to lead into the next point. Variety is key to making the flow feel natural, not mechanical.
That makes sense. Keep the reader moving without being predictable. Finally, let's talk structure. How does outlining help?
Well, flow isn't just about sentence-to-sentence links. It's about the overall journey of the piece. A good outline, even a rough mind map, ensures your ideas progress logically from one paragraph to the next.
So the whole piece has a kind of macro rhythm, a planned swing.
Exactly. If the underlying structure is confusing or jumps around, no amount of sentence-level polish can fix the overall feeling of disorientation for the reader. Each paragraph needs a clear focus and should connect smoothly to what came before and what comes next.
And the final step, which we've touched on, revising for rhythm. This isn't just proofreading, is it?
Absolutely not. This is a dedicated read-through, ideally aloud, focusing only on the sound, the pace, the cadence. Where does it drag? Where does it feel awkward? Where does the energy drop?
You're listening for the music, not just checking for typos.
Precisely. Is it interesting to listen to? Is it dynamic? If it bores you reading it aloud, imagine you're a poor reader. This is where you fine-tune the rhythm to make sure it really lands.
Okay, those techniques are solid, but let's be real, sometimes you're under pressure facing a deadline. Are there any quick tricks or shortcuts to help inject rhythm quickly? Let's start with trick 1, the rule of thirds.
Ah, yes, the magic number 3. Our brains seem naturally drawn to things in threes. It feels complete, balanced. So grouping ideas, adjectives, or actions in triplets creates instant rhythm.
Like fast, efficient, and reliable.
Exactly. Or we researched, we planned, we executed. It gives a nice, satisfying cadence. Often, you can follow a triplet with a longer, more explanatory sentence to provide contrast and detail. It's a simple but surprisingly effective structural trick.
I like that. Okay, trick 2 sounds weird. Reading backwards. Why on earth would that help with rhythm and flow?
It sounds counterintuitive, I know. But when you read forward, especially your own writing, your brain anticipates the meaning. It smooths over awkward bits because you know what you meant to say.
You fill in the gaps automatically.
Right. But if you read it backwards, sentence by sentence, starting from the last one, you break that context. You force yourself to evaluate each sentence purely on its own merits, its structure, its word choice, its sound.
Ah, so awkward phrasing or clunky rhythm jumps out more clearly because you're not focused on the overall message.
Precisely. You spot unnatural word order, weak verbs, or sentences that just don't sing on their own. It's a fantastic way to diagnose flow issues you'd otherwise miss. An old editor's trick.
Clever. Okay, trick 3. Vary punctuation for pace. How can commas and dashes actually control rhythm?
Punctuation marks are like the conductor's signals to the reader. A period is a full stop. A comma is a brief pause. A semicolon suggests a close connection between two ideas, keeping the flow going more smoothly than a period would.
Right, linking related thoughts.
And then you have the dash, specifically the em dash. Used carefully, it can create a dramatic pause, an interruption, or set off an emphatic phrase. It changes the pace suddenly.
Like adding a little jolt of energy.
Exactly. Or it can allow for an aside. Playing with commas, semicolons, and dashes gives you fine control over how quickly or slowly the reader moves through the sentence.
Interesting. Trick 4 feels a bit rebellious. Strategic rule breaking. You mean like using sentence fragments? Isn't that bad grammar?
Technically, yes. A fragment isn't a complete sentence. But used intentionally and very sparingly, it can be a powerful rhythmic tool for impact.
When would you use one?
When you want to create a sudden stop, emphasize a single point, or create tension. Imagine, the campaign results are in. Disaster. That single word fragment, disaster, hits much harder rhythmically than the results were a disaster.
It's abrupt, punchy.
Very. But you absolutely cannot overuse this. One strategic fragment might work. Littering your text with them just looks careless. Know the rule before you break it.
Good advice. Finally, trick 5. Imitate favorites. How do you actually analyze another writer's rhythm without just copying their words?
It's about dissecting their style choices. Pick a writer whose prose you admire, someone whose writing flows beautifully. Take a paragraph and really look at it.
What should you look for?
How long are their sentences, typically? Do they vary the length? Where do they place stressed words? Do they use parallelism, alliteration? How do they connect ideas? Are they using lots of commas or perhaps dashes?
So you're reverse engineering their rhythmic techniques.
Exactly. You're not stealing their content, you're learning their musicality. Maybe you notice they often use a short sentence after a very long one. Try doing that. Maybe they use a positive skillfully. Practice that structure. You absorb their cadence and adapt it to your own voice.
Let's make this concrete. Can you show an example of varying length working well?
Sure. Think about building tension. The storm raged, wind howled through the trees, rattling windows, tearing at the roof, promising destruction. Silence.
Ooh, yeah. Short setup, long descriptive buildup, then that single word. Powerful contrast.
The rhythm tells the story there. Long, short creates that tension and release.
And maybe a quick example of parallelism in action.
We saw the business example. Think of a classic like Caesar. I came, I saw, I conquered. Simple past tense verbs repeated. Immensely powerful, memorable rhythm. Or in a more modern context, our strategy focuses on 3 pillars. Engage our customers, empower our employees, enhance our products.
That parallel structure makes it stick in your mind.
It really does. It feels complete and authoritative.
Okay, let's tackle some common problems people face. You mentioned monotone sentences earlier. What's the direct fix?
Conscious variation. Actively look at your sentences. If you see 3 or 4 in a row that are roughly the same length or structure, force yourself to change one. Combine 2 short ones or break a long one down. And again, read it aloud. Your ear won't lie.
What about going too far the other way? Overuse of devices. Someone learns about alliteration and suddenly every sentence sounds like tongue twister.
Yeah, that can happen. The key is subtlety. These techniques, parallelism, alliteration, meter shifts, they should be working backstage, supporting the meaning and flow. If the reader consciously notices the technique itself, oh, look, alliteration, you've probably overdone it.
It should feel natural, not artificial.
Exactly. Edit for effect, not just for inclusion. Does this device actually enhance the rhythm and meaning, or is it just decoration? Be honest with yourself.
And for learners who feel overwhelmed, facing language barriers, maybe their vocabulary isn't huge yet, or English rhythm feels totally alien.
Start simple. Don't try to write a rhythmic masterpiece from day one. Focus on listening and mimicry. Read simple texts aloud, graded readers, children's stories, even news articles. Just focus on hearing and reproducing the stress patterns.
Train the ear first.
Train the ear and the mouth. Get the basic beat of English into your system through listening and repetition. Once that feels more natural, applying it to your own writing becomes much easier. Small steps.
Lastly, good old writer's block. Sometimes you just can't get the words flowing at all, let alone rhythmically.
When that happens, try free writing specifically focused on rhythm. Don't worry about making sense or having perfect grammar. Just try writing sentences of different lengths. Play with repetition. Try starting sentences with different kinds of phrases.
Just get the pen moving with rhythm in mind.
Exactly. Focus on the sound and the beat, not the meaning. Sometimes just playing with the musicality can unlock the content block too. Take the pressure off perfection.
It's always good to hear that people do manage to master these things. Can you share any stories of learners who really crack the code on rhythm and flow?
Definitely. There are many, but one that stands out is Soren McKenzie, not his real name, of course. He was a technically brilliant manager, but his colleagues found his emails and reports really stiff and hard to read.
The classic problem.
Right. So Soren started keeping a daily diary, but with a twist. He decided it was a safe space where he wouldn't worry about the content at all, only the rhythm. He deliberately practiced mixing short and long sentences, using parallelism, trying out different transitions.
So he separated the anxiety about content from the practice of form.
Exactly. It became his rhythmic workout zone. And over several months, that deliberate, low-stakes practice completely transformed his professional writing. He started getting feedback on how clear and persuasive his communication had become. He found his groove.
That's fantastic, using a personal project to build a professional skill.
Absolutely. Another common success story comes from online communities. I know of one user on a writing forum who consistently asked for feedback not just on grammar, but specifically on the flow and sound of their paragraphs.
They actively sought out rhythmic critique.
Yes, and the community helped them identify monotonous passages, awkward phrasing. Through that iterative process of writing, getting feedback, and revising for rhythm, they went from technically okay to genuinely flawless, as one commenter put it.
It shows the power of targeted feedback.
It does, and we see this in classrooms too. Teachers working with English language learners often find that activities focusing purely on rhythm, like choral reading of poems or dynamic prose, clapping out stresses significantly reduce writing anxiety.
Because the focus shifts from correctness to musicality.
Precisely. It helps learners feel the rhythm internally, making it easier to reproduce. And don't underestimate the power of passive absorption either. Many learners find a breakthrough just by regularly reading engaging materials or even analyzing song lyrics.
Ah, song lyrics. Makes sense. They're inherently rhythmic.
Very much so. They often use simple language but strong iambic patterns, rhymes, and repetition. Internalizing those patterns from music you enjoy can absolutely bleed over into improving your writing rhythm.
So inspiration and practice can come from many places. Before we finish, any key resources listeners could check out?
Well, for the fundamentals of style, which inherently touches on rhythm through conciseness, classic guides like Strunk and White's The Elements of Style are always relevant, though perhaps a bit prescriptive for some.
Still a foundation. What about more modern tools?
Many grammar and writing assistant apps, like Grammarly, for instance, are getting better at offering suggestions related to flow, sentence variety, and clarity. They might flag overly long sentences or repetitive structures, which directly impacts rhythm.
Helpful warnings.
And as we saw with the forum user story, don't neglect communities. Finding online forums or writers groups where you can share snippets and specifically ask, how does this sound, can provide invaluable feedback on cadence that software might miss. Hashtag tag outro.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. We've really unpacked the idea that rhythm and flow aren't just optional extras in English writing.
Not at all. They're fundamental to taking your communication from just functional to truly effective, even brilliant.
It's the difference between being understood and being remembered, being persuasive. It elevates everything from emails to essays. It's about confidence, clarity, and connection.
You stop just relaying information and start crafting experiences for your reader, using sound, pace, and structure to guide them and engage them on a deeper level. Writing that the brain naturally enjoys.
So we've spent a lot of time talking about how varying rhythm, those short, punchy sentences mixed with longer, flowing ones, impacts how people read and remember things on the page. Here's a final provocative thought to take away.
Ooh, okay.
What if you applied that same principle of rhythmic variation not just to your writing, but to how you structure your day or your tasks?
How do you mean?
Think about it. Using short, focused bursts of effort, like trochaic rhythm, maybe for quick decisions, or firing off essential emails punctuated by longer, more flowing periods of deep work, like iambic rhythm for analysis, planning, or complex drafting. Could intentionally managing the rhythm of your activities actually improve the flow and productivity of your life beyond the page?
That's actually a really interesting way to think about it. Applying writing principles to life management. Managing your energy and focus with intention, like varying sentence length.
Something to maybe experiment with. Listen for the rhythm, not just in language, but in everything.
A great thought to end on. Start listening.
What's your rhythmic writing story? We encourage you to like, share, and subscribe to explore more resources.
Hello, welcome to Learn English Lab. Today's podcast, 1 hour advanced English listening practice podcast topic name is Part 02. Writing like an editor in English. Our mission today, well, it's really focused on transforming what can be, let's face it, one of the most frustrating skills for any advanced English writer. Self-editing. You might already be writing quite well, but we're here today to help bridge that gap between just good and truly professionally polished. So we're going to take a deep, structured look at how you, the learner, can really make that shift from being the creator of your content to becoming a keen and effective critic of your own work. This whole topic, which is just so vital for building confidence and credibility, is writing like an editor in English. The central idea, it sounds simple, almost deceptively so. Approach your own text, whether it's, an academic essay, a really high-stakes business proposal, maybe even a story, approach it with a deliberate, maybe even ruthless eye for improvement. It's really the art of revision. Taking those rough initial ideas, which, let's be honest, are often kind of mentally translated from your native language, and sculpting them into smooth, engaging prose that lands exactly how you intended. And here's why this matters specifically for you, the learner. Mastering self-editing. It's a game changer. It really is. It helps non-native speakers bypass a lot of common structural pitfalls, sound much more authoritative, and build that substantial confidence you need for, say, high-level professional or academic conversations. We're not just looking for simple fixes here. We want big enhancements in clarity and impact. So let's maybe unpack that crucial difference, the mental gymnastics needed to switch from creating to critiquing.
That mental shift you mentioned, it's absolutely foundational. The moment you consciously engage that editor's mindset, you move from being the creator, who's often quite emotionally invested, in every word, every phrase, to being the objective critic.
Okay.
The creator asks, did I get my idea down? But the critic asks, is this the best, the clearest, the most impactful way to deliver this idea to my specific audience? The whole goal of making this shift is objective assessment. It's about improving the intellectual structure, boosting the clarity right down at the sentence level, and really refining the overall flow and the rhythm of the piece. When you read your work like an editor, you have to maintain this relentless sort of dual focus.
Dual focus.
Yep.
Yeah. On one hand, you've got let's call it the big picture. This is like the architecture, the blueprint of your argument. You're asking yourself, is the content organization logical? Do my ideas flow naturally from one paragraph into the next one? Are my main arguments actually supported? Is there enough evidence or maybe examples? Does the introduction really set up the main claim that the conclusion then satisfies? You see, if that structure fails...
Then it doesn't matter how good the grammar is.
Exactly. No amount of perfect grammar can save a piece with a broken structure. Then, on the other hand, we have the details. This is the really granular level, choosing the most precise word, making sure you adhere mechanically to grammar and punctuation rules, keeping a consistent style guide, learning to sort of toggle between these two scales, the big picture and the small details. That's really the defining skill of a great editor.
I find that duality really compelling because I think for many of us, especially when we're writing in a language we've learned, we tend to rush straight into the details, don't we? We look for spelling mistakes, maybe comma errors, and completely miss those big structural problems. It really emphasizes that editing needs to be, systematic. What's this 4-stage approach we should adopt for a really thorough self-edit?
That's a great point. We absolutely need to fight that natural urge for instant gratification, just fixing typos because it feels productive. A truly comprehensive edit needs 4 distinct passes, 4 stages. If you try to fix everything all at once, your brain just gets fatigued and you will inevitably miss significant errors.
Okay, so 4 stages. What's stage 1?
Our first stage is content editing. This is the big picture pass we were just talking about. Here, you are checking purely for substance and organization. Do all your points actually connect back to your main thesis? Are there any logical leaps or gaps in the argument? This is the stage where you might decide, you know what? This whole section needs to go, or maybe I need to reorder these middle 2 paragraphs because the argument is building in the wrong sequence right now.
Right.
And for the learner, this is also crucial for checking if maybe a complex translation from your first language, your L1, has accidentally created an illogical statement in English.
So basically confirm the foundation is solid before we even think about painting the walls, so to speak.
That's a perfect analogy, yes. Yeah. So next, once the foundation is solid, we move to line editing. Okay, now you're certain the content works logically. Now you focus on the individual sentence. This pass is all about refining the prose itself for maximum impact, for rhythm, for flow. Are you relying too heavily on passive voice? Are all your sentences roughly the same length, which can lead to a really choppy, monotonous rhythm? Are you using too many nominalizations, turning verbs into clunky nouns, which often just drains the energy right out of your writing? Line editing is where you swap out weak verbs for strong, active ones. It's about making the language work harder.
Making it more dynamic, I get it. What's stage 3?
Stage 3 is copy editing. This is the mechanical pass, the one most people think of when they hear editing. Now you're systematically checking grammar, spelling, punctuation, capitalization, and ensuring you're following a consistent style. For example, are you using the Oxford comma everywhere or nowhere? Consistency is key. If you're writing for, say, professional certification or for university, this is the pass that ensures your document meets that necessary technical standard.
The real nuts and bolts check.
Precisely. And then finally, stage 4 is proofreading. This is the microscopic, absolute final check. You should really only attempt this stage when you feel the document is already flawless on the other 3 levels: content, line, and copy editing. Proofreading catches those tiny, persistent typos, maybe duplicated words like the, a single missing hyphen, or perhaps a figure caption that's slightly off-center. This pass is actually best done using one of those editor's tricks we'll talk about a bit later.
That structural breakdown is incredibly helpful, especially as a strategy against feeling overwhelmed by it all. Let's circle back to the learner aspect for a moment. You mentioned earlier that self-editing improves something called metalinguistic awareness. For the advanced English speaker, what's the really profound long-term benefit of this constant self-correction?
Well, the benefit is systemic and it's cognitive. Many advanced learners operate using explicit language rules they consciously memorize, like that basic I go to store kind of rule structure. Self-editing forces you to move those rules from your conscious memory into automatic, intuitive practice. It's like muscle memory for language.
So when you actively correct, say, an article error you've made, you're actually strengthening the neural pathway for correct article usage in the future.
Ah, okay.
This constant critical self-assessment is really the pathway to true automaticity. And automaticity is the hallmark of near-native fluency. So when you proofread an email and you catch yourself habitually misusing the preposition on instead of in, for example, you're not just fixing one mistake, you're actually interrupting a learned pattern. Over time, doing this consistently leads to a massive reduction in those systematic errors that often plague writers whose first language works differently from English.
So it really provides complete professional independence, doesn't it? You're not having to rely on a teacher or maybe a colleague to catch those small habitual errors anymore. You actually own the polish yourself. Absolutely. And this ownership, it fundamentally changes how your writing is perceived by others. Think about it in a professional context. An email that is not just understandable, but clean, concise, perfectly edited. It speaks volumes about the writer's confidence, their attention to detail, their authority in the language. It transforms the writing from just functional communication into genuinely compelling communication.
Okay, this is great. Let's turn that mindset into concrete action now. You've mentioned 10 essential practical tips designed not just for editing in general, but maybe specifically tailored to tackle some of the unique cognitive hurdles faced by advanced English learners. Let's dive into those. Tip 1, edit with readers in mind. Audience focus. I like this idea. Every piece of writing is a kind of guided tour. So your job as the editor is to make sure the reader doesn't get lost along the way. You have to imagine them as, well, highly intelligent and curious, but maybe easily distracted by clutter or confusion. For learners, this is so critical because interference from your first language can often lead to phrasing that, while technically grammatical, just sounds really unnatural to a native English speaker's ear.
Exactly. And how do we test for that unnaturalness? Well, we encourage writers to test specific phrases on a peer, maybe a native speaker if possible. If not, you can even use simple online tools to check common collocations, word pairings. Here's the thing. If a native speaker has to read your sentence twice to understand it, it's probably not because they're slow. It's likely because the structure or the phrasing is obscuring the meaning. You have to ruthlessly hunt down that ambiguity.
Okay, ruthlessly hunt ambiguity. Got it. Tip 2, don't accept all changes blindly. Maintaining voice. This is relevant with all the AI tools now, isn't it? Grammar checkers, AI assistants, they can be useful, sure, but they lack context. They don't understand your specific style or intent. They often just suggest generic, bland solutions. So an effective editor questions every single suggested change. If you're using something like Grammarly or another AI tool, maybe activate the tracking features. Compare the suggested edit directly with your original sentence and your intent. If that suggested change kind of destroys the unique rhythm or the vocabulary or the stylistic tone you worked hard to create, reject it. Your authentic voice is paramount.
And this is particularly critical when you're dealing with, say, academic or technical English. In those fields, precision is often valued much more highly than just conciseness. A tool might suggest cutting what it sees as a redundant qualifying phrase simply because it flags it as fluff, but in reality that phrase might be a necessary hedge against overstatement or needed for absolute accuracy. You need that human judgment.
That makes sense. Okay, tip 3, pick a side and stay consistent. The consistency check. You mentioned inconsistency earlier. It's the editor's mortal enemy, you said. This seems like another area where L1 transfer can cause problems, especially with things like verb tense. So the tip is, rigorously avoid hopping between past and present tense within the same piece, or shifting your point of view, say, from I to one mid-paragraph.
Yes, and consistency goes beyond just tense and POV.
Right. Your crucial check here needs to involve scanning for specific elements. Watch out for subject-verb agreement shifts. Make sure numbers are treated consistently throughout the document, either all numerical digits or all spelled-out words. And double-check capitalization in things like lists or headings or titles. Consistency builds massive trust with your reader. It really signals professionalism.
And that absolutely includes formatting, too. Simple things like if you decide to use double quotation marks for dialogue, don't suddenly switch to single quotes later on. These micro decisions, they all add up. They aggregate into either a polished professional document or a confusing kind of haphazard one.
Okay, tip 4, push scenes forward with motion. Active language. This applies whether it's a story or an academic paper, right? Writing needs momentum. So the editor actively seeks out and replaces those passive voice constructions, things like the experiment was conducted by the team with their strong active counterparts. The team conducted the experiment.
Correct. And we also often talk about minimizing reliance on the verb to be. Every single time you see is, was, or were, challenge yourself. Ask, can I rephrase this? Can I replace this whole structure with a single, more powerful action verb? Strong active verbs are really the engine of English prose. Cutting out static descriptions, replacing be verbs, it dramatically improves the pace and the energy of the writing.
Strong verbs are the engine. I like that. Now, tip 5, make a list of your personal mistakes. Targeted improvement. You flag this as a potential game changer for learners. The idea is to maintain a personal error log. So you need to ask yourself, what are my 3 or maybe 5 most common systematic errors? Is it consistently messing up articles? Is it prepositions? Maybe it's misplaced commas. You have to actually quantify your own typical weaknesses. Then the trick is to review this personal checklist before you even start an edit. This allows you to preemptively scan specifically for those pitfalls you know you're prone to. It transforms a recurring weakness into a targeted practice exercise. And the goal, over time, is to consciously shrink that list, right? Which should free up your cognitive energy for more complex editing issues.
It's really the difference between just randomly hunting for errors versus applying systematic quality control based on your known issues. This is where self-editing moves from being generic polishing to becoming truly personalized learning mastery.
Personalized mastery. Okay, tip 6. Sentences do one thing at a time. Clarity overload. I can see how this happens. The complexity of a writer's thought process sometimes leads them to try and cram multiple complex ideas, often with several subordinate clauses, all into a single sentence. This must be especially true when translating complex sentence structures from languages that maybe favor longer, more winding sentences than English typically does.
Very true. L1 syntax habits play a big role here.
So for the learner, the simple solution seems to be ruthless simplification. If a sentence requires you to take 2 breaths just to read it aloud, break it into 2, maybe even 3, simpler, more direct sentences. Splitting a run-on sentence is probably the quickest, most profound boost to clarity you can achieve almost instantly.
Think of it this way. Complex thoughts actually deserve simple, clean vehicles to travel in. Our reader should be able to absorb one idea completely before they have to move on to the next one. Don't make them work so hard to unpack your meaning.
Clean vehicles for complex thoughts. Love it. Tip 7. Read aloud for rhythm, hearing the flow. This seems intuitive, but maybe underutilized. The eye is lazy, you suggested earlier. It mentally corrects things as it scans. But the ear is brutally honest. Hearing your text catches awkward phrasing, unnatural rhythms, clunky transitions, structural issues that your eye just completely misses.
Absolutely. It's incredibly effective.
And the practical test is, if you stumble when reading aloud, maybe you hesitate, or you mentally trip over a prepositional phrase, that exact spot absolutely needs revision. And there's a powerful bonus here too, isn't there? This practice dramatically improves your own pronunciation and helps reinforce the natural cadence and rhythm of spoken English, which aids overall fluency.
You'll also find you catch mistakes in things like articles and prepositions more often when you speak the words. Your ear might signal something sounds off, even if your internal grammar checker somehow overlooked it.
Makes sense. Tip 8, use insecurities as tools, leveraging doubt. Okay, this is interesting. We all know which parts of our draft felt hard to write right. The argument that felt a bit thin, the transition that felt clumsy, maybe the vocabulary choice that felt like a bit of a guess. The advice is to actually mark those spots while you're writing, put a little asterisk or highlight them.
Yes, flag them immediately.
Then when you enter the editing phase, deliberately revise those fearsome parts first. Your original doubt, your insecurity about that section, is almost always pointing you directly toward a genuine flaw, maybe in logic, or flow, or word choice. Don't avoid them. Tackle them head on.
It's really about harnessing your own critical intuition. Often, the editor's job is simply to validate the writer's original self-doubt about a particular passage. Trust that feeling.
Okay. Tip 9, put yourself in the reader's shoes. Empathy check. This sounds like it requires pure critical empathy. You have to read the work pretending you have zero prior context. Ask yourself honestly, is this section getting repetitive? Did I actually explain that acronym back on page 1? Or did I forget until page 10? Am I maybe boring the reader here with way too much background information?
You have to be the naive reader.
And then you adjust your work based on that honest outside perspective. The bottom line is, if you wouldn't want to keep reading this section, why should you expect anyone else to?
And finally, the big one, tip 10. Be merciless in cuts, killing your darlings. This is arguably the most psychologically challenging tip, maybe especially for non-native speakers who've worked hard to craft complex sentences. You have to ruthlessly remove anything that is not absolutely essential to conveying the main idea. If a word or a phrase or even a really sophisticated sentence that you might have spent 15 minutes constructing doesn't actively contribute something vital, it has to be sacrificed.
That is so difficult, though. Because when you've struggled to find just the right complex synonym, or maybe you've wrestled with a particularly challenging grammatical structure, that piece of writing feels intrinsically more valuable, doesn't it? How do we overcome that emotional attachment to our hard-won words?
We have to completely reframe how we define value. The value isn't in the effort you expended writing it. The true value lies in the clarity delivered to the reader. If that complex word you found makes the reader pause, maybe even stop and look it up, you've actually lost the reader at that moment. You've broken the flow. The editor understands that conciseness and absolute clarity are the ultimate hallmarks of professional, powerful writing. So if it doesn't serve the core purpose, it goes no matter how clever or hard-won it feels.
Ouch. Be merciless. Those 10 tips provide a solid technique base. Now, you mentioned earlier that editors have shortcuts, clever psychological tricks designed to trick our brains into seeing the text freshly. Because familiarity, as you said, is the real enemy of effective editing. Let's get into those tricks.
Yes, these are fascinating because they work by disrupting our normal reading patterns. Trick 1, backward reading. This is a real staple in professional editing circles. Instead of reading your document from the beginning, you read it sentence by sentence, starting from the very last sentence and working your way backward to the beginning.
Sentence by sentence, backwards.
Exactly. The reason it works so well is that it completely destroys your brain's ability to follow the narrative flow or the logical argument. Your brain is forced to focus solely on the mechanics of the current sentence in isolation. The grammar, the spelling, the punctuation, the internal parallelism without being distracted by continuity or the overall content. It isolates errors at that very basic mechanical level.
That's brilliant. So if I'm doing my copy editing pass, the one focused on mechanics, this trick would be ideal, right? Because I don't want to get pulled back into the story or the argument at that stage.
Precisely. It keeps you focused on the details. Okay, trick 2. Change font or format. This sounds almost too simple, but it works. If you've been staring at your document in, say, Times New Roman 12-point font for hours, just switching the font to something completely different, maybe Arial, or even something weird like Courier, or drastically increasing the line spacing and the font size, makes your brain perceive the document almost as if it's new material. This simple visual disruption helps you catch subtle mistakes, typos, formatting inconsistencies that your eyes had started to automatically gloss over because they'd become too familiar with the old look.
Like seeing it with fresh eyes.
Literally.
Exactly. Trick 3, print it out. Now, I know we live in a digital age, but there's still a lot of value here. Despite the efficiency of digital tools, physically printing a document and marking it up with a pen, maybe a colored pen, engages different cognitive pathways than editing on a glowing screen. The physical act of holding the paper, making manual marks, it creates a kind of necessary cognitive separation that often reveals those final subtle errors that were missed online.
I find that too. Sometimes I spot things on paper I just don't see on screen. It's a common experience. Okay, trick 4. Use AI tools sparingly, but strategically. We touched on this. These tools are checkers, not collaborators. Use them maybe early on to catch the really low-hanging fruit, simple typos, obvious comma splices, that sort of thing. But as part of your editing trick routine, maybe run the checker once, review every single suggestion critically against your actual intent, accept or reject consciously, and then ignore the tool completely for your subsequent deeper editing passes like content and line editing. It should be like a pre-edit scrub, never a replacement for your own human judgment.
Right. So treat the AI suggestions as just another perspective to consider, perhaps, but never, ever the final authority.
Absolutely not the final authority. Never.
Okay.
Trick 5. Time breaks. This is crucial. Emotional distance equals objectivity. You simply must step away from the text after drafting. Ideally, if it's a major piece of work like a thesis or a big report, give it at least 24 hours if you can. If time is really tight, even an overnight break or just a 30-minute walk outside, getting away from the screen is far better than nothing. The key is preventing your brain's memory from supplying what you intended to write, allowing you to see what is actually on the page.
It's some distance. Yeah.
Trick 6. Read in different voices. This is a fun variation on just reading aloud. Try actually mimicking a specific persona as you read. Maybe read it like a stern professor or a really rapid-fire news anchor, or perhaps even a bored teenager sighing their way through it. This simple vocal shift forces your ear to test the cadence, the rhythm, and the tone of your sentences in a completely new light. It's surprisingly effective at helping you flag awkward phrasing or clumsy sentence construction.
Okay, I might have to try that one. Sounds entertaining, if nothing else.
It can be. Trick 7, focus one issue per pass. Multi-pass editing. This really embodies that systematic excellence we talked about with the 4 stages, but you can apply it even within those stages. Never try to check for, say, comma splices, article errors, and flow problems all at the same time. You'll miss things. Instead, dedicate specific focused passes. Pass 1 might be only for ensuring every subject has a matching verb. Pass 2 might be only for hunting down and eliminating unnecessary adverbs. This methodical, single-issue approach ensures depth and prevents the common error of getting distracted by a different type of mistake mid-pass.
Laser focus on one thing at a time.
Exactly. Trick 8. Use checklists. This builds directly on tip 5, the personal error log. Use that log to create highly specific, personalized checklists for your editing process. Before you start a particular editing pass, run down your checklist. Did I check for my typical article errors? Did I ensure no sentence accidentally begins with and or but where it shouldn't? Did I check my list of commonly confused words? This targets your known weak points incredibly efficiently.
Makes the process less overwhelming too, I imagine.
Yeah, it does. Trick 9, peer review. This is invaluable, especially for checking clarity from an outside perspective. If possible, swap your work with a fellow advanced learner or a trusted colleague. They don't know your intentions, they don't have your L1 context in their head, they don't know your internal logic. So if they find a section confusing or unclear, it almost certainly is genuinely confusing or unclear. This is perhaps the ultimate test of audience empathy and clarity.
A fresh pair of eyes is gold.
Absolutely. And finally, Trick 10. Reward milestones. Let's be realistic. Editing can be mentally taxing. It can feel tedious. To maintain motivation, especially on long projects, give yourself tangible, small rewards after completing major stages. Maybe finishing the big content edit gets you a nice coffee break. Finishing the final, painstaking proofread gets you permission to watch a movie or go for a walk. This kind of gamification really helps sustain the necessary mental effort over the long haul.
Gamify the grind. I like it. Okay, now here's where we really see the immense power of applying these principles and tricks. Let's look at some specific before and after examples. This is where you see how just a few strategic cuts and shifts can transform writing from merely functional or even clunky to highly effective. The proof of this editing framework is truly in the final polish. We can start with example 1. This tackles sentence overload and redundancy. This often happens when a writer is trying, maybe too hard, to convey a lot of context or detail all in one go. So imagine this, before sentence. I rushed quickly down the staircase and picked up the telephone receiver that was set up on the entry table right next to the big umbrella stand, which is where we usually deposit our house keys. Whew. It's long, it feels fragmented, and it definitely pulls the reader away from the main action, doesn't it?
Definitely. And notice the redundant words the writer used. Rushed quickly. If you rush, it's inherently quick. Also, set upon the entry table on is usually sufficient and less formal. These are classic hallmarks of a first draft that hasn't been line edited.
Right, so the edited after version is much tighter, faster, more impactful. I rushed downstairs and picked up the receiver from the entry table. Simple. The editor removed the obvious redundancy quickly, used a simpler preposition from instead of upon, and crucially, cut that entire subordinate clause detailing the location of the keys because it was completely irrelevant to the primary action of answering the phone. We've tightened the action and increased the narrative pace dramatically.
That single fix perfectly demonstrates the power of line editing. The sentence went from feeling kind of languid and descriptive to feeling dynamic and action-oriented simply by prioritizing the strong action verbs and cutting the clutter.
Okay, example 2 is a classic case of cutting fluff. Conciseness, really illustrating that killing your darlings rule we discussed. Many drafts, especially perhaps academic or business writing, can get bloated with unnecessary qualifying phrases and weak intensifiers. Here's a comedic first. Before example. In the event that the system fundamentally fails, it is possible that the vast majority of our previously existing data may be irretrievably lost. Okay, that's 25 words to state what sounds like a critical risk.
And notice the hedging. In the event that, it is possible that, may be, and the redundancy. Vast majority of our previously existing data would likely suffice. The edited after version. System failure may result in irretrievable data loss. That's just 7 words.
Wow, 25 down to 7.
Huge difference. The editor removed the excessive hedging, the unnecessary adverbs fundamentally, and the redundant phrasing. The goal is always maximum information delivery with minimum reader effort. Be concise.
Okay. Example 3 illustrates the need for that merciless cut, removing ideas or details that actually derail the reader's focus from the main point of the sentence. Here's a simple before sentence. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, but then it stops suddenly because it got distracted by a squirrel running into the forest nearby. So the dog finally woke up and started barking.
You see how that sentence completely lost its way after the main clause? The core idea, the image, is the fox jumping over the dog. All the subsequent information about the squirrel and the barking dog, while potentially interesting for a story, detracts from the initial iconic sentence image. The clean, impactful after version is simply, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. End of sentence. We remove all the extraneous narrative that detracts from that central image or action.
Got it. Keep the focus tight. Our 4th example addresses enhancing flow, narrative rhythm. This is a key part of line editing and often flags L1 influence, especially if a writer's native language tends towards shorter, simpler sentences. They might produce English that sounds choppy or repetitive. So the before might be, he walked to the corner store. He bought milk. He went back home after he paid. Now, it's grammatically correct, of course, but it sounds very staccato, very basic, and maybe a bit childish. It's also repetitive, using the subject pronoun he 3 times right at the start of each clause.
Exactly. The edited after version flows much more beautifully and also demonstrates stronger, more evocative word choice. He strolled to the corner store, grabbed the milk he needed, and headed home. We've combined the actions using conjunctions and varied the sentence structure, and used much stronger verbs, strolled, grabbed, headed, instead of just walked, bought, went. This makes the rhythm much more engaging and professional sounding.
Much more natural. And finally, example 5. This one highlights correction, covering both grammar and, crucially, fact-checking. This shows that the final proofreading stage is about absolute precision on every single level. Imagine this. Before sentence, Hindu sheikhs wore turbans.
Okay, simple statement. But a quick factual check or knowledge check reveals an error. The correct term for the religious group associated with turbans in this context is Sikh, not sheikh. Sheikh is an honorific title, often used in Arab cultures. So the corrected after version is Hindu Sikhs wore turbans. It seems like a small change, maybe just a spelling error.
But it's a significant factual error.
Exactly. It undermines credibility. Editing isn't just about making the language pretty, it's fundamentally about ensuring accuracy and veracity in the information presented. Precision matters.
These examples really drive home the impact. So if we connect all these examples and the tips and the tricks back to the bigger picture for our learners, we see that advanced learners often struggle with a highly predictable, almost systematic set of challenges. These are often rooted in the structural or grammatical differences between their first language and English. Recognizing these specific patterns is really the first step toward effective self-correction and ultimately mastery, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Awareness is the first step. So let's try to tackle 10 of the most common systemic challenges that tend to plague advanced learners. And importantly, let's discuss tactical solutions for editing them out, not just restating the grammar rule itself. Okay, challenge 1. Sentence fragments. Learners sometimes write what is merely a dependent clause, like a phrase starting with because or although, as if it were a complete standalone sentence. Solution. When you're editing, the tactic is to isolate every single clause that's punctuated as a sentence. Ask yourself, does it contain both a subject and a finite verb? And can it logically stand alone and make complete sense? If the answer is no, you must either attach it correctly to a nearby independent clause, often with a comma, or rewrite it by adding the missing subject or verb to make it complete.
Check every sentence for completeness. Got it.
Challenge 2. Misplaced modifiers. These are descriptive words or phrases that are accidentally placed too far from the noun they're supposed to describe. This often happens due to L1 word order habits and can create unintentionally confusing or even absurd images. Solution. The tactical approach during editing is to isolate every single descriptive phrase, often starting with ing, id, or a preposition, then physically or mentally move that phrase so it sits directly next to the specific word it is intended to modify. For example, if your sentence reads, covered in mud, the owner washed his dog, it sounds like the owner was muddy. If you meant the dog was muddy, you need to restructure. The owner washed his dog, which was covered in mud, or perhaps the owner washed his mud-covered dog. Clarity is paramount.
Right. A humorous, misplaced modifier can completely ruin the tone of an otherwise serious or professional document.
It really can. Challenge 3. Faulty parallelism. This happens when items in a list or series don't share the same grammatical structure. It creates a jarring, unprofessional rhythm, especially noticeable in things like bulleted lists or when describing sequential steps. Solution. The tactic here is to perform a dedicated parallelism pass, using trick 7, single issue focus. Maybe highlight all the listed elements in a specific color. If you're listing actions, ensure they all share the same grammatical form. Maybe they're all gerunds ending in eminline, or all infinitives, to plus verb, or all simple nouns, or all clauses starting with that. You must maintain that consistent structural rhythm throughout the entire list or sequence.
Consistency and structure, okay.
Challenge 4. Pronoun reference ambiguity. This is a common clarity issue. It happens when you use a pronoun like it, they, this, or which, and it could plausibly refer back to 2 or more different nouns in the preceding sentence or sentences. The reader is left wondering, what does it actually mean here? Solution. The editing technique is simple but strict. If there is any potential ambiguity about what a pronoun refers to, replace the pronoun with the actual specific noun it's meant to represent. Never, ever make the reader guess. The goal is pristine, unambiguous clarity.
Don't be lazy with pronouns if it causes confusion.
Exactly. Challenge 5. Subject-verb agreement, SVA. This is a fundamental rule, but it gets tricky, especially when long descriptive clauses or multiple prepositional phrases come between the subject and its verb. Solution. During your SVA check, the tactic is to mentally or physically, by crossing out, delete all the intervening words and phrases between the main subject and the main verb. Isolate them. Then check if they agree in number. Singular subject with singular verb, plural with plural. For advanced learners, pay special attention to indefinite pronouns like each, everyone, neither. None of these are often singular in formal English, but can feel plural, leading to errors.
The distance between the subject and the verb is definitely a mental trap. It really requires a focused editing pass to overcome that reliably.
It absolutely does. It's easy to miss. Okay, challenge 6. Hyphen use, especially in compound adjectives. This rule is notoriously confusing for many learners, but getting it right is vital for clarity and professionalism. Solution. The main focus tactically should be on compound adjectives that come before the noun they modify. In this position, you almost always use a hyphen to connect the words, e.g. a well-known writer, a state-of-the-art system. However, if that same compound description follows the noun, the hyphen is typically dropped. The writer is well-known, the system is state-of-the-art. This one really requires memorizing and practicing that specific pre-noun modification rule.
Before the noun, hyphen.
no. Yeah.
After the noun.
Yeah.
Usually no hyphen.
Generally, yes. Challenge 7. Word order in questions. L1 transfer frequently leads to incorrect inversion or often a lack of inversion when forming questions in English. Learners might use statement word order with a question mark. Solution. The best approach here is dedicated practice, specifically focusing on auxiliary verb inversion patterns. Use lots of comparative examples side by side. The simple statement, he is going, versus the inverted question, is he going, or she can help versus can she help. This conscious, repetitive practice of standard English inversion patterns helps override those habitual L1 structural interferences over time.
Practice the question patterns explicitly.
Yes. Challenge 8. Article misuse. A and the. Oh, articles? This is perhaps the most persistent and cognitively challenging issue for learners whose native languages don't use articles in the same way, or at all. Solution. Simply telling a learner to internalize the rules is often not enough because the rules are complex and full of exceptions. A more tactical solution is focusing on pattern recognition during editing. Maybe keep a separate color-coded note sheet for the 3 main types of usage. Generic reference, using an or plurals with no article. Specific reference, using the to refer back to something known or unique. And unique reference, the sun, the pope. During editing, consciously practice identifying, am I introducing this concept for the first time, likely needs a "an," or am I referring back to something specific that the reader already knows about, likely needs the? This requires ongoing structural reinforcement, not just rule memorization.
That reframing from memorize the rule to recognize the pattern seems like a much more advanced and effective strategy for articles.
I believe it is, especially at this level. Challenge 9. Countable, uncountable nouns. Mistakes here directly affect which quantity words, qualifiers, you can use correctly, like many versus much or few versus little. Solution. When editing, if you find yourself using one of these specific qualifiers, many, much, few, little, number of, amount of, the tactic is to immediately stop and identify the noun it modifies. Ask, is this noun countable, like chairs, ideas, people? If yes, use many or few or number of. Is it uncountable, like information, advice, water, furniture? If yes, use much or little or amount of. This forces a conscious mental check on the noun category itself each time you use a quantity word.
Check a noun type before choosing the quantity word.
Correct. And finally, challenge 10. Plural nouns. While most English plurals are regular, just add las or es, the irregular ones, especially those tricky ones borrowed from Latin or Greek that pop up in academic writing, like criterion, data, datum, phenomena, phenomenon, analysis, analyses, can cause persistent confusion. Solution. Create a focused, personal study list of maybe 15-20 common irregular plurals that you frequently encounter in your specific field, whether academic or professional. Then, during your final proofreading pass, specifically scan your text only for those particular words on your list, checking you've used the correct singular or plural form each time.
Target the irregulars you actually use. Smart. Now, beyond these strict grammatical or mechanical challenges, we should also address those systematic style flaws that can make writing less engaging or professional, even if it's technically correct. We often see advanced learners, perhaps trying to sound sophisticated, fall into the trap of purple prose, right? Language that's intentionally overly complex, maybe too flowery, or tries too hard to sound profound, but just ends up being distracting or confusing.
Yes, purple prose is a common stylistic pitfall when writers are striving for a higher register. The remedy for purple prose is nearly always brutal simplicity and directness. If you can use a shorter, more common, more direct word to say the same thing, do it. If you find yourself using 3 adjectives where one strong one would suffice, you're probably diminishing your impact, not enhancing it. The editor's maxim should be, use big, complex words only when small, simple words genuinely fail to capture the precise meaning you need. Otherwise, prefer clarity.
Good advice. Less is often more.
Absolutely. Another pervasive style issue, often linked to trying too hard, is the overuse of adverbs, particularly those ending in adlay. Trying to modify almost every verb with an adverb, like quickly ran, dramatically increased, fundamentally changed, often signals that the verb choice itself was weak in the first draft. An effective editor will hunt down those sully adverbs. They'll often cut the adverb entirely and replace the original weak verb with a single, stronger, more precise verb that is descriptive enough to stand on its own. For instance, instead of walked quickly, maybe use strode or rushed or dashed, depending on the context. Let the verb do the work.
Replace weak verb plus adverb with one strong verb. That's actionable. This has been a truly comprehensive look at transforming our approach to writing, moving from creator to editor. We've covered the editor's fundamental mindset, those 10 key practical tips, the clever tricks to overcome editing fatigue and familiarity, and importantly, recognized our personal systematic challenges as learners, providing specific tactics to overcome them.
Absolutely. And the key takeaway really is that writing like an editor is that essential final skill set that truly elevates your English. It moves your communication from being merely functional or just good enough to being highly effective, polished, and professional. It really does require adopting that crucial mindset shift, consistently implementing those systematic tips and stages, using some of those innovative tricks to keep your perspective fresh, and constantly refining your awareness of your personal error patterns. Practice and consistency, at the end of the day, are the only true keys to making your writing genuinely shine.
And for those of you listening who are ready to explore this even further, we'd recommend focusing on some of the classical guides for style. Maybe Strunk and White's Elements of Style for its focus on conciseness, as well as practical, readily available online resources like the UNC Writing Handbook for quick reference on grammar points. And yes, tools like Grammarly can certainly assist with that initial surface-level scrub, catching basic errors, but always maintain ownership of your final text. Your judgment matters most.
We've talked a lot today about editing, mostly with the goal of sounding clear, highly proficient, often mirroring native fluency standards, right? But this does raise an important final question, maybe something for you to mull over as you begin your next revision. Particularly in creative or maybe persuasive writing, when should a writer consider intentionally breaking established grammatical or stylistic rules? When might that be done for maximum effect, for impact? And conversely, how much polish is too much? Is there a point where excessive editing might actually risk losing the unique voice, the authentic personality that makes your writing stand out in the first place? When does striving for perfection perhaps stifle that individuality?
That's a fascinating line to consider walking. When does perfection stifle personality? Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us today for this deep dive into self-editing mastery. And finally, if you found this deep dive helpful, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.